and we are live, and the title is Note Taking and Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, role playing. Well, in this case, Dungeons and Dragons Plus, because you said let's just get online. I was showing you the book I'm reading at the moment called Tales from the Loop, which
you shared that to me before, but it looks like a cool book.
It is a cool book. So
what's the subtitle on the bottom?
Role playing in the 80s that never was.
Okay, interesting.
And so the game is drawn from the universe of this artist who drew these kind of dreamy landscapes with kids and robots and dinosaurs and weird.
I thought that was a photo
in the background.
Of course,
it's a piece of art.
Wow.
The artist is Simon Stollenhag. Simon Stollenhag. He's Swedish, I believe Swedish. And so there's a bunch of other ones.
Why is it the role-playing game that never was?
So the idea is so that it started with the artwork, and it's also now a TV series on Amazon Prime that I still haven't watched it. I heard it was pretty good. It's single episodes a la Black Mirror.
Okay.
Except, and the spirit of the game and the universe is a mix of Stranger Things, The Goonies. You're a bunch of kids going on adventures and solving mysteries. And they live in this area that has called the Loop, which has a particle accelerator. And the idea is it's like the 80s, but an alternate 80s where there's robots and strange technologies. And this area where they live, which is kind of, countryside / far suburbs with a particle accelerator and strange things going on.
What a great premise.
It's a great premise. And the kids go on adventures. The adults never believe them of whatever's going on. And yeah, that's the idea. So I'm going to play this with my group. I've heard it was really good from a bunch of other people. And I did I back it? I can't remember if I backed it. So you play a bunch of kids between 10 and 15 years old. And it's kids with a capital K. And each one plays an archetype or stereotype. You stereotype, so you can choose between being so it gives you certain stats and stuff. The bookworm, the computer geek, the hick, the jock, the popular kid, the rocker, the troublemaker, or the weirdo.
That sounds so good.
So there's a thing by which you alternate. The game is played in scenes, and you alternate scenes of everyday life, or you have to deal with the droning, ever horrible day-to-day life of washing the dishes and mowing the lawn and dealing with the problems. Like every kid has problems of some kind, either your sister's gone away or your stepdad is beating you, or it doesn't get super dark, but a little bit. And alternating scenes of everyday life of the difficulties of growing up or just boring homework and stuff. And the exciting world of mysteries where they take off on bikes and go and find robots and dinosaurs.
And that's entirely from the artwork, inspired by the artwork.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's really
so. Somebody took the
impressive.
Artwork and thought there's a universe there, and it's looking like something that's almost ready-made to play. Now, I haven't really read up about the artist and the world he created and how that was linked, or how it was made into a role-playing game. But as far as I know, it was artwork, then was picked up and made into a role-playing game. And then as that, because they raised money for Kickstarter and that kind of like created some interest, and then they made it into a TV show.
I suppose that's kind of...
I think that's how it happened.
But that's a nice story, isn't it? Yeah. It's like a grassroots kind of thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a grassroots kind of thing. And certainly
not like the trailer you just watched.
Even if it's not, exactly the way it went, I know that chronologically the artwork existed before the role-playing game, before the TV show, for sure. At least that I know for sure.
Maybe that's the way. Without the internet, that wouldn't have happened, really, would it?
Probably not. And without Kickstarter or crowdfunding,
that's what I was about to say. Crowdfunding, Kickstarter.
I can only imagine there's a bunch of guys, of producers, IP guy, intellectual property, screenwriters, and all sorts, who are, probably have a large index of geeks of any kinds in there, looking for like what's trending, what's popular, what's getting money, what's getting interest.
There is going to be a certain amount of that. I keep seeing Stranger Things t-shirts, but also people who look like they got into Metallica very late. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just my pretentious.
What do you mean by that? Late in age, like they're too old? But I thought most Metallica fans are old.
No, not by age, by
I don't get it.
Length of fandom. Like you can tell they're new fans. You can just tell my pretentious
is that not
snobbiness.
Okay? But they need
it's
new
cool.
Fans. They die otherwise. Just like the brand needs to sell to the young people all the time.
It is
otherwise,
cool.
They don't convert new guys for life.
That's true.
Men
but
and women,
it is
like
good.
People, consumers, buyers.
It's good that there's new people. I don't know. That's what I mean.
The fans of today are not like the ones of yesterday.
My high horse of morality and snobbery about metal, and of course it's and I do
the
like
metal kids of today are not the same.
Well, this is very funny what you say, because every year, without fail, the older year groups, the sixth formers, will say, God, the year 7, so this is like 16, 17, 18-year-olds talking about 11, 12-year-olds. They'll go, the year 7s, who are 11, they're getting so lippy. When we were in year 7, we were scared of the sixth form. And every year I say to them, I've heard this every year for almost 20 years. Just shut up. It's not true. Yeah. Maybe it's true. Maybe it isn't true. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe you're getting old. That's my favorite.
It's not. It's the some of the annoyance I get about all the marketing fascination for describing the generational traits. And the students get into it because they read some articles. They don't really dig much deeper. And I was reading some final year synthesis because I had some exams with the final year students. So we're talking about kids that are 5 years older than the ones coming out of high school, pretty much. Some are a little bit older because they did some other studies, but roughly 5 years older than yours. And they were describing generational Gen Z traits to me in a way that I'm like, you're just describing young people of today that are slightly different from the ones of yesterday because they didn't have phones or TikTok for as long. But you're quoting things from articles that are basically tabloids, more or less. They're not really, very high research. Anyway, some of them are funny. Supposed to. I'm dissing a little bit. I apologize. Said that, I don't think any of them. I'm sorry. I know you put a lot of work in. If ever any of the students watch this, I'm not grading a lot of them, but they're for the majority. I thought some of the reasoning and just like what they were talking about was, and to be fair, it's a difficult exercise. They need to reflect back on all their studies. And I expect to find and read what they learned rather than just describing what it is that they're doing.
Yeah. Some kind of deep
because a lot of them
thinking.
Are just like, I did this. I'm like, well, great. It's fine. I'm reading this. So I know what you did.
You did that.
What did you learn?
What did you get?
And what did or some details about what you did. Because it was like, we did this challenge supporting a women's NGO in Africa. Great. And because you actually had to perform with the whole thing during that week that you did, that was a few months ago. And I didn't even know about it, but I don't need to. I read a few, so they repeat themselves because they've all done the same. But for the most part, I rarely have, the ones that do have that have better grades. What did I learn from this experience?
Yeah.
Or even just describing in a little bit, like, what did our group do? Why did the group do what we did?
Yeah.
Outside of like, I did this thing and I found out about women in Africa and it was interesting. And for the most part, it was like, that's as far as it goes. And then on the Gen Z was the second part of the exercise for them was to describe everything they're doing at work because it's a work study program.
Oh yeah.
And create a mutually beneficial partnership with something, someone, some company, some invention that would make sense for their brand, but create value somehow. So it's a very open brief. It's kind of challenging, but they have to do research. They have to talk about it with their tutor at work. They have to run a qualitative research collaborative workshop.
Wow. Okay.
They have to create a trends book to say what the trends are within their area, industry, brand, whatever, their place of work. But this is where I'm getting to my point. Sorry, it was a bit long-winded as usual. Many of them have, I thought about trends and immediately came to me, Gen Z. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not sure Gen Z is a trend. It's just young people. It happens all the time. There's young people. But fair enough, maybe. Let's keep reading.
There's nothing new under the sun.
But there's also a lot of them are like, it's just so, I thought about it and it came to me. Like, well, surely you studied, you read and looked at what was going on in your place of work, your industry, your market, what it is you're selling, who you sell to, why you sell to those people, why this is trendy. Yes, young people are trendy. They're always trendy. Most brands are trying to sell to young people. And the more we grow up and the more, I remember those articles from a few years ago, and that was before I left. That was in 2018. I was working on a project with an agency to prepare a whole update for a marketing, a board of marketing about what is going on with millennials.
Yes.
And what's funny is actually what a lot of students describing Gen Z completely forgot about Gen Y. We still have Gen Y. I mean, Gen Y was like the hottest thing not long ago. But anyway, the millennials, back then, that was 5 years ago, there was a bunch of articles going, oh my God, we had like completely discounted millennials. Now that they're in their mid-30s, they have the same preoccupations that other people in their mid-30s. They're having kids, they can't buy more kids. Yeah, so weird. Anyway, sorry.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of very interesting stuff.
There's so much that happens though. When I listening to you, and of course I'm around a lot of young people at school. When I do think of when I was 18 and 17, but the years between 16, 17 and 21, it's not a long time, but so much happened. So many formative, important kind of self-defining experiences happened that it feels like it was a long time, even though it's like 5 years. And 5 years now, like 5 years ago, I was 42, 41. Yeah, it just feels like, well, what happened in the last 5 years? And maybe a lot did happen, but whenever I think about those times, like, wow. And
I don't remember that much from it, actually.
You don't really?
From my teenage years? I mean, I do and I don't. I mean, but then again, that's the same. I have the same kind of thing for most years. As in, I have flashes, but I don't have now, if I think about it, I'll remember a lot of things, and a lot of things are coming back to mind right now because I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt these are absolutely formative years for sure.
Yeah. I think
of course, there's tons going on in that, but then I have tons going on in the past 5 years too.
Yeah,
but I do have the feeling that things are just time's like flying by faster and faster. That's for sure.
Yeah, and like,
and I do have like experience of looking and going, oh, you guys are 21, 22, really? Okay. You look like you're 12, but all right.
Wow, is that what you think?
No, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's kind of true. The first time I was teaching it 3 years ago, I thought a little bit like, oh, this is what 20 years old looks like? Oh, well, all right. I have no bearing on exactly how young kids look. Now, of course, it's generality. Some people look older, some people don't look younger, but
I think it's
I just don't know what it is anymore. That's another thing. It's just like, I don't know what it is anymore I remember vaguely. I vaguely remember feeling like I knew better. I big time knew better than the adults, and then they were old and I was young and I knew everything. But then I look at this, well, students, I guess, because that's my, frame of reference right now for young people, which is certainly, I don't mean to say that this is all young people or anything. It's just looking at somebody that age. all kinds of approaches. I tended to be a bit, in my head anyway, arrogant and know-it-all, which I still am. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I really don't know anything, and I have no idea. And the more I go, and the less I have idea about exactly, what am I doing in my life. And I kind of do know, but not really.
Everyone's just making up as they go along.
Yeah, exactly.
Winging
yeah,
it
but at that age, it didn't seem like that. It seemed like some people knew at that point, and then exactly when that would happen, it was extremely unclear. And also when it happened that I went from being young to being one of the old people, which I'm now like, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I know I'm not old, but from the perspective of my 20-year-old self, I was.
It's that point where you become.
I was, as in a 40-year-old would be.
Yeah. But it's so interesting listening to you, because when I was younger, I never felt I knew it all, ever. I felt so worried all the time, and so concerned about what everyone else. I knew.
Oh, I was very concerned about what others were thinking. And I think it's just the way that I was. It's not that I thought I knew everything, but I was, if that makes sense. I was being a know-it-all. Even if I would say, yeah, I don't know that. I just, felt
you mean
like
I don't
know how to say it.
The being of it was like, I'm better. I know what you mean by that.
Yeah, I'm very much like that.
Yeah, intellectually I was like that, but socially, oh my God. Not at all. I think what makes it more interesting is I feel like things are going around. Like I think right? I've picked up a skateboard again. Yeah. And I'm back on a skateboard again. And I'm remembering the feelings I had when I was 13, 14, being on a skateboard, and that rush.
That's super cool.
It's very cool. There's nothing like it. I'm so enjoying it. And I think it goes, I suppose it goes in cycles. Maybe we can see it from being in our 40s. Number one, it feels like there's nothing new under the sun. And it feels like the 60s come back, the 70s come back, the 80s come back, the 90s are coming. Like, just what? Why? How is this some kind of super clever marketing thing to get people to buy stuff? Probably, but the 90s and the 80s, the way that the kids talking about it, like, oh, okay, that was what I remember. And then I'm thinking, well, when I was a kid, was I thinking about? I mean, Back to the Future, I kept thinking about, because it's such a great example of it. Mm-hmm. Watching it when I was like, however old I was, going back to the 50s. Mm-hmm. So 2015, going back 30 years, would have been 1985. Yeah. What it still blows my mind thinking about that. 30 years ago was 1993.
Yeah.
Nevermind was 2 years old. What? I feel like that was not very long ago.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow. I was listening to a song from the 90s called Ik ben een Auslander by Pop Will Eat Itself. I don't know if you know it. Pop Will Eat Itself with this kind of, they're English, but this kind of rock, industrial, poppy band. Imagine Nine Inch Nails.
About a concert I saw yesterday as well. Sorry. Imagine Nine Inch Nails. Imagine
9 Inch Nails without any of the kind of pretentious kind of self-loathing, and it's kind of like that. So it's and then I'm listening to the song, and the lyrics are so good, and watching the video, I'm like, this is still
lyrics
relevant.
In German, like the title, or
no, it's just the title. Ik ben een Auslander, just I am a foreigner. The opening lyric, I think, is welcome to a state where the politics of hate.
Is it a foreigner or an outsider?
I thought it was foreigner. I thought Auslander meant maybe it's outsider.
Well, I mean, technically, I think it could be both, because it's like I'm from a land outside or a land away. So I think it's outsider or foreigner, perhaps. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. My German's like spotty. It's like from high school.
Mine too. but lyrically, I think, you know, when you see what's going on in the news and a lot of the narrative that gets pushed on me about, like, especially in the UK, about immigrants and what happened and people coming from abroad and like we're going to send people to Rwanda and all of that. The lyrics of that song are still massively, like, it's still relevant, still relevant 30 years on. And like, I can't believe, or maybe 20 something years on. And I think it doesn't feel
fast,
dated.
but not that fast also.
Yes. I think that is a great way of saying it. That is
just like means everything and nothing. So it's a complete, you know, platitude, but
platitudes, and they do have, there's some kind of relevance.
I guess it harkens, you can also tie it back to the whole book I read about What's Our Problem with Society from Tim Urban,
which I still haven't read yet.
But that we're still, no, it's okay. We're still, we're wired like, sorry, I got distracted by the building across the street where there's a guy installing a very fancy light sign. So I'm guessing for some kind of event that looks like it's possibly a cult. I don't know. It's like got a weird logo. I just got curious as to like, and it's called Mantle, and I'm like, what is this thing?
It's designed to appeal to the Gen Z.
And also, I'm also just immediately imagining some annoyance because there's guys with high like audio visual systems, production systems that I'm like, oh, you know, what's good?
That's because you're old and you want to go to sleep.
Anyway, what was I saying?
You were saying Tim Urban.
Oh yes,
we're wired.
Yeah, the idea that we've been hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years, and that all the new technology is extremely recent. So there's tons of new stuff. We didn't have the phones the same way, but there's also a lot of stuff that that maybe doesn't change all that fast, which is including us. And actually, including younger generations who like to believe that they're different because they have phones and TikTok, but they're not really. And also, there's a bunch of, I remember seeing that over the years, statistics saying that, you know, all the young people are a lot more technology savvy, but no, they're not. The more the phones are easy to use, and the more the systems and the apps are making the, you know, dumb-proof, the less technology savvy they are.
Totally agree.
TikTok doesn't, like, to scroll up TikTok does not take any particular skill of yours. And we've talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah.
Unless you're creating content, in which case it's not even necessarily technology savvy, although it could be a bit, from lighting and taking video and things like that.
Well, I mean, I've seen this, and
now I don't mean to say it's bad. I mean to say if the young person thinks they're technology savvy because they're strong on TikTok and they're better than older people, which happens, I've heard it.
Yeah, it does happen.
Now, equally, the older person is like thinking they're better because they play a vinyl or whatever, something. You know, they're not just people.
I'm grateful to have grown up in a time pre-internet and internet. I can remember both.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
What's funny is I was reading some of my students' things saying the same. But they didn't have the same kind of, well, they were talking about being at an age where they didn't have a phone until they were like 12 or something.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I don't know if it's exactly that, but something along those lines.
Play a computer game in an 8-bit computer with 64K.
Yeah, we had that kind of conversation before. But circling back to what were we talking about?
Tim Urban.
Role-playing games, Wonka. Movies.
Well, you didn't mention Wonka. So
no, we didn't mention Wonka yet. Sorry.
Can you got so
actually movies? So we could go into. Sorry, actually, I was going to go back to a conversation, but actually, I don't think there's any loose threads. We can just talk about something else.
Well, I mentioned that you watched the trailer.
I watched the trailer for Wonka before we started streaming. Wonka with. Is it Timothy Chalamet?
Yeah.
I think it's Timothy. Yes, it's Timothy Chalamet. And I'm very dubious about the movie. I mean, it looks very beautifully made. I don't know who wrote it. Same team apparently as they announced stuff. I don't know which team it is.
Okay.
But anyway, it's about origin story of Willy Wonka. Hugh Grant plays it in Palooka.
I'm sorry, I can't even.
I know. But apparently he is
Ah.
he shows up in a town where everybody is dour. Apparently he just like walks on a square, and everything is kind of Tim Burton-esque, very, very highly saturated colors everywhere, unreal, kind of like fantasy saturated version of a 19th century Victorian Britain. I don't know how else to
19th
describe
century. Okay.
That's what it looks like. Like
Wow.
a Dickens revisited by
Yeah.
Tim Urban. Very colorful but kind of dark. And anyway, he starts daydreaming about his chocolate shop, and somehow the town is dominated by a chocolate cartel. It's very difficult to get implanted as a new chocolate maker. So I'm only just commenting on a couple of little bits from the 2-minute trailer, right? But there's just, and then he gets a fine because he's daydreaming on the street, which is not allowed.
Okay. It really does feel
I'm really not. I mean, on one hand, it could be really nice, but it doesn't really look like it. It looks like it's going to be bad. But I'm afraid this is going to be popular as well. I don't know who wrote it. What is it exactly? It probably doesn't seem to have anything to do with Roald Dahl. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I suppose it goes back to this whole thing about recycling ideas and like wanting to explore things. It could. It's an interesting premise.
Oh yeah, no. I have to say, at the same time, I'm like kind of interested, and there's a lot of whimsy, of course, because it's Wonka.
Yeah,
a lot of magical whimsy, kind of that looks sort of cool. That probably would be quite appealing for families and children. And
not I cynical, kind of jaded 40-year-olds who remember it when they were kids.
Exactly. So and certainly the recycling material is like taking something that has a base. I think that's the main gist of how they operate in terms of Hollywood. It's like having a base of like, well, we know this is this much popularity, so we'll make our money back.
And there's also this thing about what you said about trends, where you've got this is trending, so let's make something else. And I suppose that Tales from the Loop, or whatever you were saying, like it was around already, but it seems to have fitted in with the trend cycle with Stranger Things. But Stranger Things seems to have
absolutely
captured something and then kickstarted a whole like, oh wow,
that's circling back to the 80s as well. Somehow it seems to have.
Goonies, Stand By Me, all of that. Goonies is great. We watched it.
I want to rewatch Stand By Me. It's been a while.
Me too. That's a good
long time. It was one of my go-to movies as a child. My father got me. Our father got that as VHS. Got it as in a VHS.
What's a VHS? No, I'm joking. I think I've told this story, and even this is an old story. So this is probably about 10 years old, maybe a bit less. I was talking about in a class. We're talking, it must be at 10 years old, and I said something about like, well, vinyl gives the best sound production. I honestly, this 14-year-old, 15-year-old boy put his hand up and said, "What's vinyl?"
Yeah.
I was like, "What?" But now people know about vinyl. So I mean, the kids know about vinyl. I'll talk about some random song from my youth, and the pupils will know it because it's in a computer game or because they've seen it on a TikTok trend. Like, wow, I suppose. But isn't it like something about geniuses, like artists? Some people copy, geniuses steal, or something.
Oh yeah. So great artists copy, geniuses steal, something like that. Imitate, artists imitate, genius steals.
Yeah, it does feel like it, but maybe that's just us. And
no, I think it's everybody, but yeah.
Well, no. What I was going to say, the full thought is, you and I have the experience of saying something that we think is obvious, and everyone else goes, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Oh yes, you talked about that last week. Completely,
we have to backtrack and explain ourselves.
Similar that I have people who appreciate me tell me like you have so much stuff to give, and I say that to other people, and but when people say it to me, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I do a little bit, but I don't. And am I playing to my abilities? Should I be doing? But then I also think that playing to my abilities might be doing more, which is not necessarily what it means. Yeah.
No, I don't think it's for you. I don't think it's doing more. This could be a segue. I think it's writing. I really do. And I never knew.
That's another one where time flies. And funny enough, I had that brief thought this morning as we were going to talk, thinking, you know what, it's already like middle of the year, and I didn't really write much aside from I wrote a post on LinkedIn. But I mean, the short story that I wanted to finish last year, the second draft of, I haven't touched it. But also the experience is like time flies. The whole week has gone by, another week, and week by week, I'm like,
what did I do?
What did I do? Or no, but it's the first thought is I didn't have time or didn't take time, but also when would I have done it? But it takes concentrated effort of not doing
now,
other things.
This is a segue. I'm gonna make a link.
Okay.
Way back when
I wanted to make it. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
When you were talking about Rome and Rome research, and I read a thread about Rome and thoughts and capturing thoughts.
The note-taking app, yeah.
The note-taking app. I can completely see when I listen to you and from what I know of you, why something like Rome or Logseek is perfect for you. It is. And having invested time, because I'm off, having watched probably hours of videos about Logseek.
You did?
And I did.
And I have tabs open with Logseek stuff, and I haven't really looked at it yet.
And bi-directional linking, and because when I looked at Rome and when I looked at Obsidian, I was like, what the hell is this? I could not understand it. It was like, but that's because I was still thinking about things in a very traditional kind of physical filing cabinet folders, like hierarchical way. And that's what I was used to. That's what I am used to. I literally have a filing cabinet here with folders in it, physical folders, and I know where everything is. And then this week, I spent some time at school physically purging my physical filing cabinet and clearing it all out. And then I did the same thing electronically. I cleared out my Google Drive, cleared out my Google, like my Dropbox. I've done all that.
My hard drive's almost full.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I did it, because my hard drive was crashing and falling over. There's always something that drives it. But honestly, the clarity in my head, the way I feel about it, like, wow, it's different. But when I watched this video about Logseek, this guy called James D'Souza starts explaining that hierarchical thinking, and then Logseek or Obsidian or Rome is just pure stream of consciousness. Like you can just write and link and then whatever, and then you just end up with this massive network of information that you can click through. I was like, oh, this is what Willem was talking about. There's a whole, it's a complete paradigm shift for how I was thinking.
Yeah.
And I can see the value of it. And I'm telling you, from someone that knows you, invest a little bit of time in either Logseek or Rome or Obsidian, whatever the hell tool you use, bi-directional linking of stream of consciousness and idea capture will allow you, with a little bit of effort and a bit of routine, you could produce really good stuff. I'm so convinced of that.
Probably. I mean, I was just thinking that I don't feel like I'm using the bidirectional linking all that much, or as much as I thought I would, or I may be not extracting the value from it. I don't know.
It's remarkably so. Okay. This whole conversation started.
And I know this is not even talking about the fact that I know I'm probably using 5% of the capabilities of the app, but that's normal. Yeah. I was doing that with Evernote as well, so it's not.
No, because I love Evernote. Right, Evernote is my thing. I have it all organized. I use it really well. I delete a bunch of stuff. I keep it all like done. I use GTD principles and stuff, and it works really well.
Yeah, whereas I just collect and just amass I have tons and tons and tons and tons of pages inside of Rome. Now, I don't see them because of my day-to-day is always just clean. It's just another day, and I add a journal entry, and that's it. And then and then when I'm working on stuff, I add in new pages. I have a bunch of sort of what I call the metadata pages that are connectors.
Now, I think that's cool. The only thing I think you're missing from the whole thing is just putting a tag or putting a bidirectional link in. That's all.
No, that's what I mean.
It will.
No,
it will.
I have that. That's what I meant by metadata pages.
Okay. So Evernote, very hierarchical. And this whole thing started because you were like, Evernote is increasing its prices. You sent me that link. I read it and then went down a rabbit hole for about 4 days, which kind of annoyed Davina. But,
Really? Why?
I'm at home because I'm sitting at my desk watching videos, and then she keeps asking me stuff and then I get annoyed with her. Because
Sorry, just briefly on Evernote, because I only read one article I sent you, but they got acquired.
Yeah, they did.
There's been some concern over their app for the past couple of years already, I think. And they just announced that they were laying off a bunch of people and moving all their operations to Europe.
They did.
And I think that's the main gist of the news, right?
So
there's a concern whether the app is going to be maintained and for how long and what's happening to it, I think.
Now that's happened.
I mean, it's going to be maintained, but there's a concern it's not going to be growing or not going to be doing anything better. But that's what I thought. That's what it seemed like, but I don't know if it's true.
And I've had this before where I've looked at Evernote and then gone, and it's your fault. I'm going to blame you entirely. Where you'll say something. It's
because I started looking at things 3 years ago with Rome.
Well, even before that, or whenever we started, like you'd say something and then I'd go and look at a bunch of other tools and I'd come back to Evernote. I'd go look at a bunch of other tools and I come back, and every so often I'll do that. Go look at and I'll look at the same ones. I'll look at Google Keep. I'll look at
you
Notion.
You saw the Thiago Forte video about the note-taking styles, the gardener, the librarian,
and the architect and the librarian or whatever it is. And I guess I'm a librarian, but this week, honestly, paradigm shifting when I really got what the idea of Rome and Logseek were. I remember reading a tweet thread from the guy who started Rome, going, "This is really blowing my mind because this is really about thought and how we capture things, and it has it has so much potential, and I'm not there yet. I've had points this week where I've been typing something in Evernote and then I've gone, there's that thing that I did. Where is it? And then I've searched and I can't find it and I get annoyed. And then I remember what it is later on. Now, using something like Rome, I know I would have found it. I know I would have.
Oh, that's one thing. So the push and pull of that one is that I can always pretty easily find everything in Rome because I have multiple ways to find it.
Yeah.
Because I'm always tagging everything. So that tagging means that I got bi-directional links. So there's the main timeline, which is like the backbone of Rome, which is one of the things I really like about it.
It's very good.
Logseek is also thing. Oh, okay. So that's another reason I might look into it because Obsidian doesn't have that.
It's a journal. It just opens with the date and then you have splurge everything on there.
So at the worst case, you can always find back things with dates.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tag a bunch of pages. So I use a very simple structure that I found in a tutorial, and I've never really improved from that. But I think Logseek is also like that. There's so much of Rome that is open to building. So it's kind of like you need to have a developer's mind or programmer's mind to use it, true. Sort of.
Yeah.
And I don't. I don't really. And you need to be. Well, you don't need to be because a lot of people don't use it like that. I don't use it like that. But it seems like the power users have a lot of appreciation and interest for building systems and programming, coding, using backlinks and what seems to me complicated things aside from just like taking notes.
Yeah.
Anyhow, all that said, the visual way of using Rome it just doesn't work. It's crap. There's been a lot of criticism for Rome not really improving over the last 3 years, and them being apparently pompous around their app and a bit weird. So it seems like there was a lot of promise 3 years ago that hasn't really delivered all that much. There are some new features, but I don't think it's anything that I use.
I think Rome was the first to kind of explore this idea of a stream of consciousness, where network thinking on an app. And Logseq is very, very clean to me, and very, very easy to use. It seems easy, much easier to use. And the couple of videos that I watched, it just, I can see its power, and I think you'd like it. And it's also free.
Yeah, I need to try it.
At the moment, it's still in beta.
I've been using Obsidian to write articles, so I'm kind of testing it. The thing about Obsidian that doesn't work the same as Rome, and I watched a couple of videos about it, is that so with Rome you could just like open two square brackets, and and that link creates a new page. By just purely by virtue of the link. In Obsidian, you have to create the page separately.
That's annoying.
Then you can link to it. So what's interesting is it seems to be a little bit of a, that's how it occurs to me anyway, a medium between a traditional architecture and a networked architecture. If I don't know if that's the right word, but I guess you mean,
makes sense to me. I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's because you have to think about the pages that you might want to link to or link between, and have them there as notes to be able to have the connections. And they don't have to be in files and folders necessarily. However, you do have a file and folder structure in Obsidian, so you can use it that way. You don't have a day by day. You can, the closest thing so far as I figured is you can have a note of the day open automatically, but you have to close and open Obsidian every day for that to happen. Whereas Rome automatically goes, this is today. And so if you do close Rome for a few days, it'll just reopen it the day you are. But I always have it open, so just and also because I journal, I put my journal entries every day, and I have multiple ways now. My multiple ways are if I try to remember something.
Go on, finish what you're saying.
No, trying to remember something I wanted to say earlier, but I always have multiple ways. My main interest is to have multiple ways to find things. Oh, that's what I wanted to say by the push and pull. I don't know if push and pull is the right idea, but the advantages of kind of thinking like a brain, and I always have ways to connect back to other previously typed content. On another hand, I don't have anything to presence it unless I think about it in advance. So the one thing I've always kind of liked about, well, in the case of Evernote, let's say the way I had it organized, I had everything organized in a variety of files and folders, and I had it on the side, so it was there. If I, that reminded me of a bunch of stuff that was there. Rome doesn't have that, although I can add things to the side if I want to, and I have a few general categories.
Like you mean like a favorites or a thing like that?
Yeah, it's the favorites.
Yeah,
but I don't even use it. I've had broad categories that I created when I started using it, but I don't use them very much, actually. All that to say that every day is a new blank page. Unless I have put a reminder for that day, I will not have anything. So
can you put reminders in Rome?
Yeah, of course. You can do all sorts of stuff from a systems perspective, but that's kind of, you have to think about it in advance. Otherwise, it's not going to remind you. So that's part of the systems building that I guess I'm not as good as. So it's kind of like you can find everything, but it won't do much of a job to bring things back for you unless you plan it. And I don't know how to, I don't know if it's something to solve necessarily. It's as much the app as it is just me.
I don't think it's necessarily something to solve. I think it's that kind of ability to surf through your information and see what's interesting and then act on it that's key. And I think things like Rome and Logseq with the networked idea of thinking rather than hierarchies like Evernote do that really well. And I think, so I looked at one app I looked at that came very close to replacing Evernote was NoteJoy. And like, you know what you said about square brackets? NoteJoy looks like Evernote.
Okay.
Very same kind of hierarchical thing, but you can do the 2 square bracket thing and create a link to any note. I was like, good. Wow, that's cool. That's really, because in Evernote to create a link to another note is actually difficult. It is difficult. And I use Evernote to manage my tasks as well. And I do like using my journal and paper for some stuff, but there's something different about having it as an extension of my brain all in Evernote. But so I looked at Simple Note, which is from the guys that do WordPress. That was too simple. It's so simple, it's ridiculous. You can't do anything other than notes. I was like, forget that. I looked at Google Keep. There's no way of organizing all the notes. It just becomes a wash of post-its on your screen. You can do hashtag and link to another note very easily, but there was no, that was too simple. You could add pictures and reminders and all that kind of stuff. Then I looked at Ample Note, and Ample Note is super about productivity and like GTD and task management, and not about ideas and like, oh, I've read this link, I want to read it later, I just want to keep it. It's rubbish for that. Then I looked at Notion, and I opened Notion and went, what the hell am I looking at? It was just too much. I was just like, oh. And the app on my phone, that's the other thing for me. I've got to be able to use it on my phone. I was like, this is too complicated. I can understand why people get into it, but I felt the learning curve to even look at Notion was too much.
I kind of have the same feeling when I started looking at Notion. I only did it once, and I was like, what?
People say that.
It seems to be like a Lego building
set,
with a blank canvas, and I'm like, but
it looked more complicated. It looks way more complicated than Rome or Logseek. I was like, so I just like, nah. And then I also had a quick look at Trello. I was like, then I looked at some other random notes.
Trello is really project management, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some. That's the other thing about NoteJoy. It's much more about collaboration. You have your library, and then a bunch of other people have their libraries that you can access. And I was like, you can still use it in individual. So I looked at all this stuff. I looked at Tana, which is like it's still in beta, and like, and I was like,
wow, you found out a lot of stuff. Oh, you really dived in.
Yeah,
dived in.
Dive is American. So I kept looking. And then I looked at NoteJoy. I was like, okay, let me look at NoteJoy. Looks cool. Bi-directional links, 2 square brackets, awesome. Type it in, then it brings up all the notes. You can link to it easily. And then when I looked at the price, when I'm thinking longer term, what I'd need would be the same price as Evernote is. I was like, okay.
What you would need, because everything else is more expensive, or what? I didn't get that part. Sorry.
The thing about if I was going to move everything to NoteJoy, and given the size of my current Evernote database, that I was initially looking at stuff that was similar to Evernote until I got the hang of thinking in terms of Roam and Logseek and networked whatever. I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll jump to NoteJoy. But the cost of the NoteJoy level that I needed is the same as where I'm currently paying and what I will be paying on Evernote. At which point I was like, well, it's the same thing's happening again. It's gone full circle. I'm sticking with Evernote. And it's what I know. I use it really well. It's like, it does, I can take pictures and it puts it in.
I wanted to ask you about the other types of media, which is something that I don't really use. I've never really, even in Evernote, I did have a little bit of other types of documents, but Roam, I mostly very much, and like Evernote, use it for written notes.
No, you can.
Obviously.
So
I don't use it for anything like audio memos, photos. I just don't do any of that, but you do.
I don't use it for photos so much. It's much more about me and what I want to keep. So PDFs, links. No, I don't think there's any other app that can
kind of PDFs.
Web link, yeah, any. Just shove them in. They're all going to Evernote. Especially if I need
to. I put them in my hard drive, in my Dropbox.
Well, yeah, I was doing
PDFs. I mean, PDFs usually belong in some kind of category in my work folders or my personal folders.
Well, if I know I'm going to read it, sometimes I get a PDF of a free book, and like I will open Evernote and read it in there. Other times, I've sent it to my Kindle and read it on my Kindle, and that's the other alternative that I'll do. But you can do cool stuff in PDFs on Evernote.
Okay.
And but the thing that I really like about Evernote that a lot of other apps don't do very well is sharing a web link straight to Evernote, and it's in Evernote. Now, I am looking at Logseek, and Logseek does have a lot of really. I can see myself.
I have to spend time looking at it. because I know we've talked about this before, but I know that in 2 years I have to. I'm not going to keep Rome. It's too expensive, and I think it should. There's a few different reasons that make me want to move anyway. But I do have 3 years of stuff in there, and I still have tons of stuff in my Evernote that I never moved over because it was too complicated.
You can move stuff. There are things that show you how you can move stuff, but the thing about
they
Rome
didn't work, at least at the time, and a year ago it didn't work.
Is Rome
or it
all
worked
in
by
Markdown?
10 by 10, but it didn't.
Is Rome all in like Markdown?
I believe so.
Well, then you can move it to Logseq super easily.
I probably, hopefully should, because I think it's the same kind of guys that did it. Like, there was a lot of similar interest in both. But I haven't really looked at Logseq. I've been meaning to, but I haven't done that yet.
I think you'll find it's very similar to Rome. I never looked at
I've
Rome.
enjoyed, and the little I'm using Obsidian, I'm enjoying to write in it a bit more, maybe a bit more than Rome, only because Rome is only bullet points, whereas Obsidian
this is
not
the criticism. Yeah, this is the one thing I was like, well, long form writing in something like Rome could be like I don't know.
It's one point. On the other hand, it only takes one, pressing of the shift button to go to the line on the same block. And technically, I think there was some people arguing for it. I haven't really used it that way. For being able to easily move a block, which is a block is a bullet point, so easily move it up or move it down.
You can't move it in Rome?
Yes, you can. That's the point.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting.
So you can drag and drop the blocks.
Every single bullet is a thing. It's like a piece of elements. So you can move it around. It's its own thing. It's its own page. Yeah,
that's exactly the same as Logseq. I think they've taken a lot of the functionality of Rome, which made it.
I think they just started making Logseq straight after Rome was announced, and it was like a split off at the beta version or something like that. I'm not sure.
Is it the same people, really?
No, not the same. No, not the same. Not the same. I mean, they just took the idea, ran with it in a different direction.
I also like
that's what I vaguely I remember hearing about 3 years ago, but I don't know.
Something I found helpful. I quite like Ness Labs for this kind of stuff. I don't know if you heard of that website.
No, I don't know. Yeah, what that is.
I think she's like a designer, worked at Google. One of those cool people who you just think, oh, that would be cool if I could do that. She just writes articles and worked at Google and did loads of design stuff and has a newsletter of 1 million people or something stupid, like that kind of.
It is still a geeky, super niche area to go into, like heavy note taking, comparing productivity.
I like the way she writes, and I like the different comparison. She's done a comparison of all different apps, and she talks about architects, gardeners, and whatever the two. But her style I find very accessible and very easy to read. So all of this is what I'm going to poke you about. I think Rome. That kind of networked thinking is definitely your bag.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You just need a little something routine or whatever to write.
Yeah, no, I do need a bit more of a structure
because you journal and you meditate daily.
Yes, I do.
So I don't think it's that different to writing something.
No, it is. Well, what's different is to take sustained time to do it. And getting back to I don't know what the access is. I didn't hold very long on the Atomic Habits type thing. I tried that. I could try again because I didn't keep it for very long. Where it didn't make sense is I started with write a sentence of a project, but very quickly it wasn't making any sense because I needed to spend more time on it. So I gave up or got busy doing something else. So writing at least one sentence is not necessarily a bad way to form the habit, but to write a longer form of, so I need to put more time into it than just one sentence. Or if I don't know what I'm writing, the sentence doesn't make sense. But that was been my excuse to stop the habit, I guess. So I don't know.
I don't know. But you've got, honestly, I agree with what other people say. You've got so much to contribute.
Thank you.
And it just I want to read it. I want to fiction.
Talking about that,
I don't care.
I saw and read, and I did publish something on LinkedIn about The Old Oak, the new Ken Loach movie I went to see this week. I really
You did. I didn't comment on
beautiful.
I like the way you wrote about that, because you were
Yeah.
kind of musing, and you were. It was almost like I was seeing your thought processes as I was reading it.
I
Is it
stopped
this?
myself
Is it
halfway
that?
through, but it's one of the first times I'm kind of opening myself to musing, even though I do have a stronger opinion than that. But I'm also not. But I'm quick to question my own opinions, because I can think about a bunch of different stuff. But it was one way to start thinking and talking about the fact that I don't really necessarily believe, and I don't at all, that the area I work in, generally speaking, is a net plus for people on the planet, I guess.
Yeah, we're back to that fundamental, like, what do I do with my life?
But on the other hand, I had a very funny experience yesterday afternoon. Went to see, so there's a nearly free jazz and classical concert series in the summer at the Parc Floral, like the botanical gardens, well, the flower gardens of Paris. They have an amphitheater, outdoor amphitheater, and nearly, because you have to pay like €2 or €3 to get into the gardens, but then the concert's free. They're all like during the summer. And went to see this British artist, jazz. I think he called himself like spiritual jazz musician. Very funny character, super cool music. And I was like, it started, I was like, wow, this is going to be weird. Just when the guy showed up, I read the description. He calls himself Alabaster de Plume. He's from Manchester.
What a great name.
Yeah, it's a great name. And it's like a mix of kind of like chanting, humming, slam poetry, but he also talks like a kid's musician. The music is compelling. He plays the saxophone and the guitar and sings, but the singing is more like poetry than anything else. And he talks very slowly. I mean, he showed up on stage dressed, he's like, wow, this guy is very artsy. I don't know, he has such an energy. And he talked between songs and during the songs and in the lyrics about how life is tricky sometimes. So we got to be there for one another. And I know you are there for me. And because you're here, I show up and I can express myself. So thank you. I love you. Things like that. And it was really great. He was like, I fucking love you. And then he would do these pieces that are very kind of dreamy, kind of half you falling asleep, but really beautiful. And the two, he's playing with a bass and a drummer.
Yep.
Both women, which is cool. Also, like to have it's like a more female than male on stage, even though it's like his band name. And beautiful voices. So there's a mix of like humming and a little bit of lyrics. And then he'd finish the song and you'd be like, yeah, that was awesome. Just a lot of energy, but it clashed with actually the music itself. And he's a very funny character. Very much like, I love you. I know sometimes things can be really difficult. It took a lot of stuff for you to get here today. We live through difficult things. So remember that, I love you and you love one another. And if you see somebody else that seems to be dealing with difficult times, but sometimes we think we don't have the right to say anything, well, I give it to you. Things like that. It was very funny. It's a very funny character.
That's great.
Cool. He's like, sometimes you think it's funny. Maybe you think I'm funny when I say this to you. But hey, we all are. Like, it's not, he didn't say exactly like that, but something along those lines. I'll find the music and send it over to you, because I'm going to look really delighted. It was one of those things you're like, I would have never discovered that guy. And he was a really good musician. And it was strange. And it was really pleasant at the same time. It was really great.
I think musings, the muse is
musings. I do a lot of musings, and I feel like I should have more decisive ways to finish things, but maybe not, actually. Maybe I don't need to.
What you wrote about the Ken Loach film worked.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
It worked. And I
haven't looked at my LinkedIn in a few days, so I'm going to go back to it.
I think I'm up to 62 posts in a row.
Wow.
Days.
I should be doing more, whatever. I have ideas. At least I wrote one this week, so there's that. Two, actually. I posted another one.
Hang on.
Shared another.
Having ideas is not a problem for you.
What?
Having ideas is not a problem for you.
No, but writing the posts is.
Writing is different. They're two different things. Oh, another thing. Have you heard of the Hemingway app?
No. What is that?
So what it does is it takes your writing and then it analyzes it for passive voice and all the other kind of things that make it harder to read and highlights it. So it's an editor basically. But you can use it to write in as well. It's very clean. I think it's hemingwayapp.com. I did send you a link to it on WhatsApp.
Okay.
I really, really, really like it.
Okay.
So I've been able to write stuff and then put it in, and then it's like having someone else look at my writing, and then I can tweak it rather than having to do all the heavy lifting myself. And I think it's really good.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. Thank you. I need to keep writing. I need to put more time towards it. This summer, I need to update my website just a few times and like finish some things about what it is I'm selling product-wise. But I've been saying that every year. But that's just I just undermined what I said. But anyway, yeah.
We're all so human. We do that, don't we?
Yeah, and that's exactly what that guy was talking about yesterday.
I'll
the
say
singer,
it,
which was fantastic.
and then I'll just spoil it with the next comment. There's something that really. So I was really worried about skateboarding. Like, so I live on a road that is a cul-de-sac, and I was like, dealing with what other people might think if I go and skateboard. I'm out there on the board, like who's this middle-aged dude? He's having a midlife crisis, which I probably am. Like just on the skateboard, and I had all this like noise in my head, and I was like, no, I'm just going to get out there on the board, just get there, and if I fall over, who cares? And then I was like, and now I'm going to go out with my pads on.
Yeah.
Okay. So I put the pads on.
I dealt with, and sorry, go ahead.
And I was like, now then yesterday. I went out on, was it yesterday? No, it was Friday morning. I'm off school. I'm out on the board. People are leaving for work or whatever outside. And I'm trying to master like a 180 kick turn or whatever it is. Just practicing at the end of my road. Every single person who I saw, and I saw about 6 people, not including kids from the road, so we know each other to say hi to, was smiling when they saw me on the board. They were smiling. And I looked at one person and said, never too old. And she went, completely, you keep going. And as someone came by with their child, what's he doing? Oh, he's on his skateboard. And then yesterday, someone else was smiling. And I was like, well, this is what it's about. Like, I'm really enjoying myself. Other people are smiling. This is like, why am I worried about what other people think?
Yeah. And what we don't realize, of course, is like what the impact that we have on others is making them smile. And it takes something to be, well, like that artist yesterday, the weird one, to say some things that are weird, but actually so many people were smiling. And it's very un-French to talk about those kinds of things.
Is it really?
A few really dour, sour-looking couple, because old. Well, it trended on the older side to come at the flower gardens in the afternoon. Not only, fortunately, but a little bit trending towards the older side. Older women and men and women who left after 2 songs were like, but
we were saying
there's a
this
family
week,
in front of me who are loving it, and a bunch of other people smiling and loving it, and a lot of people really appreciated. Not everybody appreciated to the same degree, of course, but then again, whatever, that's but
it's always going to happen.
I think I say it's very un-French. I think it's probably not very British either, to be weird and talk about how humans beings function, and the fact that I love you and we can all. And he was like, "You're doing great. You're doing fantastic. I'm so happy." And his mom was there. My mom is here. She's from Manchester. She teaches French. So she's come to France, to your beautiful city. I'm going to spend time with my mom. It was cool. And he's not young. So it was a really fantastic energy concert.
That's so
and also
great.
When going like, you're all great. You're doing so great as people. We're really doing great. And I was like, wow, this is so clashing with what's going on in the news. That are riots, kids being killed by police. And it's interesting also, the Ken Loach movie, seeing what's going on or thinking about, am I making a difference? Is is what I do for a living worthwhile? Also, listen to this kind of stuff and was like, you're doing fine. Life can be really difficult. So just, you're here, you showed up, you're doing things. Let's love one another. You're like, wow, okay, maybe it can't be that simple sometimes. I don't know. And I guess also this week is like showing up for what's important. There could be a lot of worries about, and there are, of mine on not doing enough work-wise, not having had enough work the last couple of months, so like summer's a bit tight. But on the other hand, I was like, well, screw it. Let's just, it's my godson's birthday. I'm almost at the end of my annual pass in Disneyland and go spend a big day over there, wander around Paris, and went to see Mission Impossible on Friday.
I do want to see it. Is it good?
It was good. It's good. I really enjoyed it. It's unsurprisingly or like expectedly for every single movie of its style to come out, it's too long. It's just 2 hours and 40 minutes or 45 minutes. It's very long. I feel like, come on, you could have cut out 20 or 30 movies, 20 or 30 minutes. No, it's very enjoyable. It made me want to watch the other Mission Impossible. I thought, oh, what if I did a marathon? Or I, watch them over again. Not the same sitting necessarily, because that's a lot of movies. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Completely ridiculous, crazy action. I kind of liked. So a couple of people were like, a few people were cinema buffs sitting behind us. So I heard them comment at the end of the movie on saying, "Oh, it seems to be a bit slow," but I liked that. The whole premise, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying it because you kind of get it in the trailer, I think. The whole premise is there's a rogue AI as the main enemy. So there's a whole thing of like all the technology that usually you work with doesn't work anymore. So they need to go back to analog and old school ways of doing things. So for me, anyway, the fact that the movie is kind of slowed down in terms of its action, in terms of its rhythm, matches with this whole notion that they need to go back to past way of doing Mission Impossible and using slightly older technology.
MacGyver.
Yeah, MacGyvering it a little bit. I mean, it's still completely ridiculously over the top, insane action, right? But
is it Christopher McQuarrie?
I don't know who directed it.
Or because I mean, ever since The Usual Suspects, I like the way he does things.
And there's another thing.
He did a couple of others.
And I could be wrong. This is what I'm kind of feeling. The feel is for many action movies, and this might be a little bit of a Michael Bay trend. There's accelerating things in such a way that action scenes become blurry. You don't even know what's going on anymore. So actually slowing it all down is, I appreciate it. Now, it's not super slow or anything, but... Oh, and a funny fact, I'd forgotten that I went with my girlfriend to Venice in March. Well, I hadn't forgotten that, but what I had forgotten is we had dinner at a natural wine bar and restaurant. We were the only ones there. We were chatting with the owner for a while, who told us that Mission Impossible had shot there, right there in front of his restaurant. So he told us what had happened around the bridges.
Wow.
And when they said in the movie, we're going to Venice, and I was like, oh, I forgot. And even funnier, again, I don't think it's spoiling a lot from saying where they go in the movie, because they have a bunch of locations.
He was in Venice in Mission Impossible 3.
Was he?
Or 2, yeah.
I don't think so, because he says
maybe
in the movie Rome. He's never been.
It was definitely in Italy.
I can't remember which one.
The one with Tandy Newton in it.
I can't remember.
Anyway, see, this is how brains work. Connections, right?
Christopher McQuarrie directed it, yes. And so they're in Venice, and I recognized a bunch of the shots, and in particular that massive scene that happened right where we were having dinner. And I remember talking
That's
with
cool.
the guy in the restaurant was like, "Yeah, pull out your phone. I'll show you on the trailer." And there was 5 seconds that was, it was like, "This is where we are right now." Oh, that's cool. And the other increase, also kind of funny little fact is, I joined my girlfriend, who was arriving for work on the Orient Express to Venice, and I met her there. And they go from Venice on the Orient Express in the movie, and they're going to Innsbruck, and I went to Innsbruck, not on the Orient Express, a mix of train and local trains and buses, but the whole scenes like they're in areas that I went through, which is also, in the
Oh,
Austrian
that's
Alps,
cool.
which is cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Which was cool. It was cute. And the movie was, I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, Christopher McQuarrie.
Did he write it?
I think Tanda, huh?
Did Christopher
he write
McQuarrie write
That's
it?
a good question.
I do like the way
Bruce Geller, Eric Yunderson, and others.
Oh, don't know who they are. Bruce Geller sounds familiar.
No idea who they are.
But I do, yeah. Maybe I'll go see it today.
I enjoyed it. It was cool. I mean, I'm a bit of a. I know some people don't like it and criticize it. The heist movie as a form, it's very formulaic, of course, but I like it.
Movies are formulaic. We're storytellers.
Well, certainly Mission Impossible movies, but I like that.
But no more so than Marvel. I mean, I like it. It's. But there's something about it's impossible. It's set in that universe of ridiculousness that you're ready for it.
Yeah. And it's well done in that. And don't remember it's part one. So,
Does it also have the whole, like, you were talking about the loop thing where you can play the role-playing game, but you have each stereotype of the kid. Does it also have all the characters? Like you have the cool one, the woman,
well, they're the same. Well, they're the same. They're always the same. They're the same.
Is Simon Pegg
Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg are in it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
James or Rhames?
Ving Rhames.
Rhames, yes, that's right.
Have you seen? Did you watch I think we talked about this. The Guy Ritchie film, Game of War, Rue de Guerre.
Yes, Ruse de Guerre, Operation Fortune.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, I liked it.
Very similar idea. Very
other
similar.
big thing. So my girlfriend's a massive fan of Spaced.
And
I had
never watched.
Oh, you've never watched? I started watching yesterday. It's so good.
Loads of people
I had
recommended
watched
it
some episodes. We have a friend in common who showed it to me, but I didn't watch all of them. So we're gonna watch all of them, I think.
Yeah, I think I would love it.
Oh yeah, completely. It's so it's such a concentrated of geekdom.
Okay.
Every single reference is something like geeky, like belongs to an 80s cartoon or an 80s movie or a sci-fi reference or a popular blockbuster reference. And there's like
so
5 a minute.
Sounds like you, me, and some of our friends talking.
Exactly. That's why it was popular with them.
Because I've got Simon Pegg's autobiography, and I read that.
Do? Oh, that must be interesting.
And I read it quite a while ago, actually. Davina got me a signed copy. She went and got it signed by him, so I've got a signed copy. He's I'm looking for it now. Actually, is it up here? No, it's not here. No, it's very good. The bit where he explains where he meets Nick Frost for the first time sounds like it could be you and me, you and one of our mutual friends talking. It's ridiculous.
It's funny because and it reminded me of Truth Seekers, the show on Prime. Did you watch it?
No.
It's their show that they did in 2020 that sadly there's only one season, but it was really good. We watched an episode yesterday.
Was it Simon Pegg and Nick Frost?
Nick Frost, yeah.
Okay.
Simon Pegg is kind of in the background a little bit. He plays in it, but he's more in the background than Nick Frost.
Is it fiction?
A few other actors. Yeah, it is. It's like a mix of odd middle of the countryside X-Files. It sounds like that. And it's but it's surprisingly a bit scary, but well done. And it's odd. It's like you goofball. There's some comedy, but comedy doesn't dominate aside from like absurdity and oddity. It's just like Nick Frost is an old and, kind of like living with his dad dude that works for a telecoms broadband operator who takes a young guy under his wing. But he's also he has a YouTube channel about the supernatural.
What a great premise.
Yeah, and of course nothing had happened in his life until now. There's like all sorts of strange things going on, but it's surprisingly pretty good, really good. I really enjoyed the whole series, and they're quickly building up an arc of like backstory of crazy things going on, of very supernatural, mixed in a lot of different types, ghost hunting, echoes, aliens, all sorts. But yeah, sadly, I don't know what's happened with it. If they're trying to renew it, but clearly there's no other season. I haven't looked at what's happened with the production, if they canceled or if they're trying to get more money or what.
This is the thing about like it's very. I haven't the only thing I've watched and got into with Davina is Succession, and it is very good. It's catapulted itself into my top 10 TV series.
Well, that one's super popular.
It's and it's not popular for, or I don't like it for the reasons a lot of people like. Oh, it's super rich being stupid. I like it because it is fundamentally it's stories again, but people and characters, and the way they interact with each other and family. This is just what it's about. I think that's why Davina and I both like it. It's completely over the top, but it's all about human behavior at its core and what happens when people get pissed off with each other.
Yeah. That's what I particularly liked in the Old Oak as well. Or at least human behaviors, but real stories and inspired by real stories that are on the end of Ken Loach's thing, which is like the people that are just enfranchised and lost a lot of things.
He does a lot of films like that. Did you ever watch Veep or The Thick of It?
Yeah, I love The Thick of It. And Veep, I saw the first season, and first and second. I was talking about that with my partner as well.
I love The Thick of It.
That's another thing that we need to watch again. I love The Thick of It.
The guy who was a writer.
We talked about it not that long ago, actually, on our calls.
Did we? Oh, the guy was a writer. Oh, we did, yeah, because I think so. The guy who was a writer on The Thick of It and created Peep Show is behind Succession.
Yes, and he told me exactly that.
Oh, did I? Okay, I didn't know any of The Thick of It. So the Thick of It isn't for everybody, I don't think. I think it's very, very English. I absolutely love it.
I love it.
It's so...
Well, Malcolm is like, you can't make that kind of character up. He's so good. The writing is fantastic as well.
It is. It is, and it's based off actual real-life politicians. Yeah, and you didn't watch In the Loop, have you? Oh, you should watch that.
Yeah, I need to watch it. We talked about that. I think I haven't watched it.
Just for the fax machine. You'll know it when you see it.
Okay.
Yeah,
that might be the movie for tonight.
Well, I might go and see Mission Impossible. There was something else I wanted to end with, and I can't remember what it is, but never mind.
Something about writing, or something about.
I just want you to write more and use Logseek, and so I don't feel like such a weirdo about talking about networked thinking and note taking and backlinks.
I'm completely into this kind of stuff. It's just that I didn't really follow the amount of time that you spent on it this week.
Yeah. No, I don't remember what it was I wanted to end with, but never mind.
That's okay.
It would work out. Oh yeah, I do remember, and it's a setup for next week. Another thing I totally blame you for, and now I'm to book 4 of Dresden Files. I'm going to read the whole damn thing now.
Yes.
And distract me from reading anything else.
Yes.
You are such an ass.
So you finished Grave Peril?
Yes. I know about werewolves and vampires and big fights with vampires. And I've told people I'm reading a series of books about a wizard called Harry. Not Harry Potter, just better.
Yes, it is better. Completely better.
And I keep thinking this is so rubbishly put together, but it's not. It's really good.
It is, right? It's surprisingly. I'm like, this seems completely bad, but it's really good.
It's really good, I think what makes it really good is it's very accessible language. It's written really well, and there's definitely a sense of world building going on. And I'm like, but who's this? And I want to know more. Like, what did he do to what's his godmother? Who's his mum? Like, and it's, I can't believe there's 18 of them.
17 for now.
17.
17 and a collection of short stories.
Is it going to finish at 18? Is it going to end? Is it ended?
I don't think so.
Because I think
I read he's planning for like 20 plus.
Because Amazon is recommending to me, and he's got a bunch of other stuff he's written.
Apparently, his other books are great too. I've heard it.
He's like, how the hell does he write all this stuff? I want to find out.
I found out that my boss from years ago had read all of them, and she told me the Collectolero was really good.
The what?
And I had no idea she was into fantasy. I don't think she was. She probably picked it up
because of you.
Well, no. I wouldn't take responsibility for her, but
How does he write? That's what I'm going to find out. We'll talk
He's
about
an
that
interesting character too. He was, and guess what? Full on into role playing games too. All right. So,
maybe that's what you need to do. You write one fantasy novel, and then it just takes off, and then you have to write shed loads, and then become this fantasy writer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
You got the right name for it.
Yeah.
Your name make a cool kind of on a book.
Yes, people tell me that I have a strong name, which I appreciate. It's cool. There's tie-ins, graphic novels about the series. The series is slated to run 23 or 24 books. 20 to 21 case books like we've seen so far, capped by a big apocalyptic trilogy. Because who doesn't love apocalyptic trilogies? This is on the Jim Butcher's official website.
Oh, what have you done to me? Because after this call, I'm going to go on a skateboard and I'll come back. I want to know about how he writes and his writing practices.
I'm curious about that too. And I've been meaning to watch some of his talks. I'm also curious about Brandon Sanderson. He's like the two of them are, on par with like how prolific and popular they are. But I think Jim Butcher started being popular later in life than Brandon Sanderson.
So there's hope for us.
But they're certainly both role-playing game aficionados.
It's storytelling. That's what it is. Now we need to bring it to a close.
Yeah, we do. All right, cool.
Next week. Are we all right for next week?
Yes, I am. I will be. So next week, and I put this in the invite, we'll talk about writing. We'll talk about role-playing games specifically. Let's talk about. You've talked about Brandon Sanderson before, but it's in one of the notes to talk about. Yeah, and Jim Butcher. Still on the books is creating your character for Dungeons and Dragons. Oh yeah, then we'll do that next week. Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that next week. We'll do that, and I'll dive into how Jim Butcher writes. I want to find out about how he does stuff. Sounds good. Cool. All right. Thank you.